Oh, hey, I'm Joe Mack. Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about Empire of the Damned. Empire of the Damned by Jay Kristoff is the second book in the Empire of the Vampire trilogy, with the third book coming out soon. Now, this book was shorter than the first one, but it was no less interesting. Due to the use of the frame narrative in this story, you don't get lost between the books. You're able to pick up by having the characters explain kind of what was going on. And I think that's actually one of the points where this book tends to excel in comparison to other books that use the frame narrative. Specifically, it is better at using the frame narrative than The Name of the Wind, in the sense that what is happening in the present day is relevant to the ongoing story. It's more interesting, and there's just more substance overall when it comes back to the telltale version of what's going on. When we come back to Gabriel and Jean, these are French names, so it's not easy for me to do. Jean Francois, when the vampire and Gabriel are when we jump back to them in the tower that Gabriel's being held prisoner, we get a sense that the story isn't over, and I think that that really lends to my interest in what's going on. Even though we're being told what happened, we know that it's not over. In the same way that Sun Eater keeps me interested, we know what's going to happen in the end from the first book, but it's about the journey, not the destination so much there. And in Empire of the Vampire and Empire of the Damned, the journey's not over. So we don't actually know what the destination is going to be because we're being told the story while we're in the middle of it. And I think that that is probably the biggest highlight of this series for me. I also really learned something about myself reading this, and it's something that's been present in a lot of books, and it's something that was definitely present in the previous volume, but I am not a fan of spicy pieces of reading. It makes me uncomfortable. I don't know if it's because it's a male author or what the reason is, but the way that things are described, it just seems over the top sometimes. Like there's too much effort being put into it to steer away from like specifics and what's going on. I don't like the I don't even know how to phrase it, but like the words that they choose to use to describe certain solids or liquids or gases or anything that's going on in any of these portions just really I if I wasn't worried about something happening during those scenes that's relevant to the story, which sometimes a fight breaks out, I would be skimming heavily getting to the end. So that's something that I learned about myself while reading this book, because there are a handful of scenes that are a bit spicy. So with that out of the way, before we dive into the rest, as always, I'll give a little spoiler warning before I talk about anything specific to Volume 2 of this story. It will be hard to discuss about anything without spoiling Volume 1, so if you haven't read Empire of the Vampire and you don't want to hear about any of the progression or anything that's happened throughout that story, I'd implore you to leave now. So with that being said, I will tell you that Empire of the Damned, I am going to give a 3.75 out of 5. So since I already commented on it, let's start with pacing and structure. Structure-wise, I think it's done very well. I think that, like I said, the frame narrative in this series goes hard. I also think that had it not been for the expansion of that frame narrative, we'll call it, to keep it spoiler free, that occurs where it occurs in the book, I think it would have suffered. I think I would have gotten bored. But that extra dynamic that Jay Kristoff adds saves the book, in my opinion, and really adds to it. I think pacing wise, it does pretty good. It's not as good as the overall structure. I think pacing, is sitting somewhere around a 3, where the structure is a 4 for me. I think that some of the things could have been cut out. It's not every page is not necessary in this book, and it's already small, so there was already a lot of cuts that took place. And this might be me being biased because, I think you could just take out any of the spicy things right off the bat. I don't think it really adds to what's going on. I don't think it's necessary to add to the relationships, like to portray how serious a relationship might be, especially the kind of story that it is. It's definitely extra. It's like the DLC I didn't need for this book. That's not the only thing. I'm not saying that knocked the pacing down 2 points from it. I just think that from where we started to where we get to by the end of the book, even though it was shorter than the first one, I felt like it took me too long to get there. So taking pacing and structure, putting them together, we're going to get a 3.5 out of 5. Let's jump into characters. The characters in the book, most of them, we've already met. So we're not really meeting anybody new, at least on the good guy side. On the bad guy side, as far as the Devoke vampires go, we do get to meet some pretty important characters from their line. And that entire family is pretty interesting, and I enjoyed learning about them. As far as the good guys go, I think Celine is the only one we really got a lot more information on. We learn a little bit more about Dior, but not in so much as what she can do, just kind of more what she's made of. And I think that that's good. But we already know Gabriel, and he is our main guy. The characters that get added to the story are few in number, and they are very interesting. But overall, there's not as much character development as is even really needed, honestly. Book 1 did a really good job establishing the characters as they are. Like I said, we get to learn a little bit more about Dior, and we get to learn about the Devoke vampires, and that's really as much as it is. I think the rest of anything that we learned falls more under world building than anything else, which we'll get to. So with characters, just because, I guess it's not really fair because this is a book 2, but I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5, so a little bit above average. Now, the world building, that's the best part of this book for me. I'm very interested in Gabriel and Celine's bloodline, their lineage. There's a little spoiler about what they're called, so I can't remember where it started, and I'm not going to mess that up and spoil anything, so I'm just going to say their lineage and the line that they hail from. But we learn more about that, and that's the best part of this book for me. The intrigue and the tension built around what's going on with their blood is more interesting than the Grail portion of the book for me. We learn about the Devoke vampires very much and their dynamics with the Voss. We really get to see the inner workings of how the Devoke family runs things, being the Untamed. Getting that intimate insight, I think, was awesome for us as the reader. Watching the development throughout that really gave depth and made the world feel real. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of the book, the plot. I think the biggest thing hampering the plot was the pacing, as I talked about before. Plot is pretty basic. It's still a rescue. I think that had the entire plot of this book just continued down the path of rescue, whether it's rescuing everybody or rescuing one person, it would be super low for me. But on top of everything else that's going on, the present day plot of exactly where are we in the grand scheme while Gabriel is telling the story. The story that Gabriel is telling is the low end. The rescue portions, what Gabriel's been through, really drags it down for me. The end of the book, the last handful of chapters, really threw a wrench into the plot, and I think that is what elevated it for me, because it is what has me so excited to come back for the final volume. And I guess my hype for learning the end and finally getting the answers in book 3 kind of picks it up. I feel like giving it a 3 is low. I think maybe I got to start doing things out of 10. I don't think I gave myself enough numbers for most of these, but for now, we'll settle on 3.5 out of 5 for the plot. Spoilers! Thank the Redeemer. We got another POV in this book. If I had to listen to Gabriel just tell his story, his version of his story the whole time, I don't know if I would have finished the book, to be honest with you. I guess you could call it a twist, but adding that little extra bit by having Celine, I'm so excited about this, having Celine's point of view brought into the story added the dynamic that this needed in order to bring it into a good to great book status. I think besides that, it would have been very average. I honestly don't know if I would have continued with the pacing and everything that was going on with Gabriel up to the point of introducing Celine being also held prisoner. I think that is the best part of this book for me. I love it. And then later, when we're getting both kind of like back and forth, and then later when we're getting both at the same time, and then later when we find out that like they're working together. And then later at the end, the last 15% of this book is a 10 out of 10. Unfortunately, the first 90% exist, but the last, what did I say? 10%? The last 10% is so good. So good. I can't wait for the next one. I'm so happy that it's going to come soon. It got so good at the end. It took so long to get there. It was an uphill battle, and the further we went, the better it got. But I had to get we had like it's like going up the I can't even think of a cool little thing to compare it to. But thank God we got that piece in the end. It was great. I can't say enough about it. Everything from that point forward, and like in that last, even what's going on in the story combined with it, the tension, the pacing, everything gets jacked up, and I'm still feeling it right now talking about it. Finding out that Dior's blood helps break the hold that the vampires have on people is awesome. All the extra things that her blood, the abilities that her blood has, I think were great additives to this book. I like her a lot more as a character by the end of this one. Seeing her take control and using her brain to figure out what to do in the situation that she's found herself in, which is not a good one. It's like the worst one you can be in, but finding a way to persevere and handle the things that are thrown at her, I really enjoyed that. The church under the ground, which ends up being where Marin is, which is pretty sick at the end of the book, as well as Dior waking up. So I don't know if Dior at the end, and I might have missed this, let me know in the comments if you know what's up. I don't know if Dior is turned because she did get bitten and ingest vampire blood when she comes back to life at the end, or if this is just more Grail blood power at work. So that's something I'm interested to find out. I'm happy that one of the Asani are alive, since everyone else is killing themselves or getting killed and being sucked into each other. So I like all that. I'm super excited to find out about. Super excited that Gabe and Selena are working together. So there's something that's going to happen in this story that they get on better terms. I'm sure they're not really like faking when they're being mad at each other, but it's serving a purpose now, and that's cool. I'm also really excited to see present day come to a head, as it's going to have to. So, I'm expecting they got caught on purpose because there's something important that's going to happen in this tower. So, I'm very excited for the next book. But this last 10, 15, 20% of the book saved it for me, and it was absolutely incredible. So, I can't say enough good things about that. So are you reading the Empire of the Vampire series? How do you think Empire of the Dam held up to the first book? Do you like spicy parts in books, even if it's not necessarily a spicy book? Do you like having that thrown in there? Let me know. Get in the comments. Love you. Bye. Spoilers. I didn't make it.